welcome to another episode of the 905 Roundup. I'm Roland Tanner, and we don't have Joel today. We're letting Joel have a day off after he stood in valiantly. Yeah, I don't know if valiance came into it, but I guess, whatever. But we're giving him the day off, and stepping in once again is I don't know, super sub isn't a high enough praise, I think, but founder member of the Five Timers Club. You've got the blazer, you've got the jacket, the whole thing. Laura Steiner from the Milton Reporter. Welcome back, Laura.
Thanks. I'm glad to be back. I've been having fun. I haven't realized it was 5 times. So
I think it must be. I don't actually know it's 5, but it's getting up there, isn't it? One way or the other.
Yeah.
Say 5.
I know it's twice now as co-host. So
yeah, well, absolutely. You're definitely part of the team. And well, when we start off, we'll be very lighthearted there, and we're going to start off with some sad news, I guess. Well, no, I guess about it. Definitely sad news. And that's the news that Hazel McCallion, the former, very long time mayor of Mississauga, the first and only mayor of Mississauga for a very long time, has passed away at the age of 101 years old. And well, I mean, 101 years old, it's certainly a life well lived, and Hurricane Hazel, as she's called, is well known to all of us. And we were talking about her just last week on this podcast. And when they say not in flattering terms, it wasn't about Hazel McCallion. It was more about how she was being used by the province, but we may get into that later. Well, what's, Laura, just starting off with you, I mean, what do you think Hazel McCallion's legacy is, as a really a perennial fixture of 905 politics over the last half century?
I really think it's that she's inspired so many women to get into politics. Like I had regional councillor Samira Ali had a lovely social media post up about meeting her and the piece of advice that she gave her. So, and it's just the influences like that, and even former MP, former Conservative Party leadership candidate Lisa Raitt, she was posting about her too. So the inspiration crosses boundaries, and I think we should remember that no matter what she's done, she's also inspired all these women.
And the thing is,
and she was a woman doing in politics at a time when that was more discouraged than encouraged, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so. 101 years old. That means quick math. Hazel McCallion was born in 1922. Yeah, am I doing that right? Yeah, 1922.
Yeah,
100 minus 1. And I mean, women hadn't actually had the vote for very long then. When did women get the vote in Canada? I mean, it wasn't long before that, was it? I think it's we forget how short the history of democracy is, and that for most of the period that we've been a proper democracy in that women and men got to vote, there were very, very few women who actually made it to the highest levels of politics. I think that's a really, really important point. I can only imagine. I mean, obviously, I wasn't here, but I can only imagine what the average city council looked like in the 70s and 80s. Well, I know what they looked like in the 80s, and yeah, it really is people like Hazel McCallion who sort of paved the way, I guess. Did you actually ever meet her yourself?
In a roundabout way, yes. I worked for about a year. It's now defunct, for a web-based TV station here in Milton, and we had a breakfast show called Breakfast with Friends, and we thought, well, one episode for the fun of it, let's get Mayor Krantz and Mayor McCallion on together.
Right.
And this was probably 11 or 12 years ago anyway. And and she was sturdy. She was a force.
I mean, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to anybody, but she was a very different kettle of fish to Gord Krantz. I think it's fair to say. Is that? I mean, I have never met Gord Krantz.
It's fair to, yeah, it's pretty fair to say she was more, I guess, black and white, and I guess he's a bit of a, he's a bit of a he's a bit of a charmer. He's a salesman. He's really outgoing, and but again, as Hazel, as the, I guess the generation is, he's also very to the point as well. So
I think the people who lasted politics are, I mean, they are. I'm going to actually just give me 1 second while I close my window so you don't have to listen to the dog barking outside, and I'll be right back. I don't know if it's coming through on the microphone, but. It was annoying me, even if it wasn't annoying our listeners.
I couldn't hear it.
Oh, I think Zoom does quite a good job of cutting a lot of things out. But yeah, I mean, you don't get to be in politics for a long time without having some pretty impressive people skills, I think, and that kind of gift of the gab. And I think something I've certainly noticed over the years with politicians who've made the biggest impact on me is the type of people who just walk into a room and you feel their presence. There are people in life who can do that. And the one time I was in a room with Hazel McCallion was actually at a leadership convention. It was the Ontario Liberal Leadership Convention where Kathleen Wynne became leader. And McCallion, I mean, oddly that she's ended her life associated with the PCs. On that day, she was in the camp of Kathleen Wynne's leadership campaign. She was very much someone who wasn't tied to any party, but would kind of was willing to lend her support to whoever. And those old-fashioned conventions are quite something to see. I mean, it's literally just like a room full of people milling around. And Hazel McCallion was able to command, that room, even on the day when other people were running for election. The fact that she was there and sort of visible in the they have little sort of camp areas where for each candidate. And as I remember, shouting vociferously at one of the other candidates from her podium. Again, politics in the raw. I mean, it's that way of choosing a leader was invented back in the sort of 1700s or the 1800s or something, and I think Canada's the last place in the world that does it. And I'm not saying it's a good way to pick a leader, but there's nothing quite like it when you see it happening. So that was one time I saw Hazel McCallion, and she very much fit into that old school, just say what you think kind of style of politics.
Good listeners.
Yeah, well, there's politicians who stick around for a long time, love them or loathe them, are characters, aren't they? I mean, it's like to say, Lisa Raitt I would say Lisa Raitt has kind of come to that place where you may not be a conservative, you may not agree with much of what she says, but there is a level of respect that she has now, having been around for a long time and being willing to say what she thinks. There's a level of trust that people have for what she says, even if you don't like it,
She's still very well respected here in Milton, very well liked.
And if some people can do that, regardless of party and the rest of it. And I'd say there's not enough of those people around who are able to do that, who are kind of able to sort of step outside the party's side of things. But I mean, looking at her time as mayor, and it was a sensitive issue right after somebody's died. But I mean, I think it's okay. I think it's perfectly respectful to say, well, what was her mayoralty like, and what, really, she obviously has shaped Mississauga to a huge degree. And there are some people who would say that that's not been a positive experience in many ways. I mean, what do you think her legacy is from that perspective of as a city builder, in effect?
I think we were talking about, I think the sprawl is probably a valid point, because, also the thing about Milton is it takes a good look at what other communities are doing, and not just Halton. Like, it's not that far to the west end of Mississauga from where I'm sitting right now. So it's about 10 minutes, give or take. And, and just the sprawl of it is like almost uncontrolled. And Milton, when it's been looking at its growth plans, it's sort of the struggle not to be like Mississauga. And unfortunately, if you ask, unfortunately, there's probably an argument to be made that yes, it's starting to become a little bit more like Mississauga.
I know when I was in my brief and unspectacular political career, one of the phrases I heard most often when I was knocking on doors is, "We don't want to live in Mississauga." It was just said again and again and again. It's like, I left Mississauga because I want to get away from that. We don't want Burlington to become like Mississauga. We don't want.
Exactly.
And whether you think that those opinions are fair, unfair, with the need for urban density and all those other things, it's a very, that's not a good thing to have your city constantly referred to as that. We don't want to be that city. And for that city not to be Hamilton anymore. It's
a little bit of a relief, though, isn't it? I mean, the Hamilton is kind of
Hamilton's the Renaissance city now. All the best people
are kind of going back a little bit, although it's sort of looking like Andrea Horvath wasn't the
it's going to take
might not have been the finest choice. I would.
Time will tell.
Yeah,
I could do with. I mean, going briefly down that road, I could do with seeing a few less meetings of her shaking hands with prominent conservatives. It's like, I know that this is what mayors do, but I find it difficult. We didn't choose you to be pals with Doug Ford. We chose you, or the city chose you, to fully in the awareness that you were supposed to be the person who wasn't going to get on with Doug Ford. That was what everybody threatened. Yeah. So, well, if you choose Andrea, Hamilton's going to be screwed by the province. Well, some people might think that you'd rather be screwed than do a deal with the devil, so to speak. Anyway, another story for another day, maybe. But
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the article in the CBC sort of announcing her Hazel McCallion's passing used that phrase, the queen of sprawl. And well, I mean, do you think, in looking at the way the cities are actually run and where the power actually lies in councils, I mean, do you think it's really fair to put all that at her door, or do you think it's more it would have happened anyway under any leader?
It might be about, it might be about 50-50, really, because obviously we might even be seeing it now with certain actions of the province that I'm sure we'll get around to talking to in a minute, but it might be 50-50. A lot of municipal politics does have to do with the people sitting in those seats and around the table, and the mayor at the head of the table, and also a lot of the staff coordinators and planners and all of that. But there's something structural as well, like structural to either the structure of municipal government, the structure of the land. Like, one of the issues municipalities are facing is that land planning policy. And, and the sense that there was a sense for a few years that, in Milton's case at least, if you didn't approve a development, that was going straight to the land planning tribunal. and usually or OMB, and they would rubber stamp, and then that would be the end of it. And so there's probably something that's been structurally wrong with municipalities and the way they're organized that's been there for a while. But
Yeah,
it's sort of equal parts shared with the fact that there's a staff, that there's council, that there's a mayor, and all have some kind of vision for the city or for the town, that you got to figure out, how do we do this? How do we negotiate this with all the other provincial pieces?
well, I mean, the OMB may be the only thing in Ontario politics that was older than Hazel McCallion. It's not called the OMB anymore, but
No, it's not.
In its current form. It goes way back. I think it was called the Ontario Railway Board or something like that. Initially, it was about getting railways built.
Okay.
But yeah. I tend to feel that mayors used to have more autonomy than they do now, or at least they were less likely to get overruled. But there probably less reason why they would be overruled back then. I mean, politics for most of the 20th century, municipal politics was just so uncontroversial, it seems to me, in most of what's now the 905 region, that you look at Gord Krantz's political career, and very seldom has he really ever had to run against anybody in the entire entire career.
The past October was probably the first real competitor that he's had in a while.
I think the only other person who put on any kind of show, any kind of challenge was Colin Best,
yes,
Best, who's still around. But I mean, not close. It just was he got a respectable number of votes. And whereas usually, any challenger was, just might as well have stayed at home for all the all the good they did in the electoral numbers. But that was kind of typical of Hazel McCallion didn't bother campaigning. Gord Krantz still doesn't bother campaigning. Did he campaign this year? I don't know. Did he do a little bit of campaigning?
He's very not really, no. But then I found the dynamics of campaigning were completely changed by the COVID, by COVID.
Yeah.
And stuff. And there weren't that many debates. The person that they've had a couple of bigger all-ward debates lately, but they weren't really, somebody wasn't really interested in having them. There were a lot of rumors that somebody was refusing to go to a couple of them. But there was a lot more focus on just the mayoralty race, because they had the one credible candidate. So
yeah. I mean, we've probably spoken about enough about Hazel McCallion, and I mean, definitely she has a legacy, and it's a significant one. Whether you consider it good, bad, or indifferent, certainly the interviews I was hearing on 680 News today speak to the fact that she's still got that kind of popular touch. That, a lot of people in Mississauga will remember her with a great deal of affection, and that's all right and proper. I do think that as the kind of archetype of sprawl, Mississauga, it's a shame that there wasn't a voice anywhere in Mississauga over the last 50 years saying, hey, sure, we want to go as far down this road of just being sprawl central. I understand there is now, Mississauga is the first city in the 905 which just has literally no green space left at all that can be developed. Like, there is none. There's no appeals anymore because it's all gone. The only way is up. And it's also the only city in Ontario, I believe, that is actually seeing a population decrease at the moment. Its population went down, I believe, last year.
Because they're coming to Milton.
Well, everybody wants to
There's
move to
like,
Milton.
yeah, there's pockets down. No, really, there's pockets down in this very south end by Britannia Road that I forget. I was talking to someone. I was in a store and I was talking to someone down in that area, and they were saying that, oh, so and so goes to get their hair. Neighbors of theirs go to get their hair done in Mississauga.
Right.
So
it's I mean,
everybody is kind of just moving west.
And the problem with sprawl development is like, I don't even know where Mississauga stops and Halton starts, or it's like you can drive along Dundas. I don't know what city I'm in. It's all the same. It's just
there's a stretch of Dundas where it's like the right side you're in Oakville, the left side you're in Mississauga.
And who really, it's the same stuff. It's the same restaurants. It's the same coffee shops. It's the same outlet mall, not outlet malls, but there are outlet malls too, but Canadian Tire and all the rest of it, and it's so featureless. But again, I mean that to me is the problem. We haven't done a great job of building memorable, distinctive cities, have we?
No.
And people know that because that's why they always say, "I don't want to live in Mississauga." It's that's a shame. But I think we definitely, to give Hazel McCallion the positive final note, she was a hell of a character. You may not agree with everything that she did, but she was definitely a politician of distinction, and I'm sure she will be remembered with great fondness. And we'll leave the whole business of what on earth the province was doing that we discussed last week for another day, I think.
Sounds fair.
And I don't know if you spoke about this with Joel a couple of weeks ago, but I mean, I don't think we spoke. You and I haven't spoken since the election. Obviously, Gord Krantz won again. There was Zisha and Hamid did put on a decent show. Close but no cigar. I mean, and not that close, but closer than anybody's ever been before, I guess.
Yeah. Within 1,000 votes. I think it was 995.
Okay, so in terms of votes alone, that's pretty close. Yeah. Okay.
But it's the context of there was something in the neighborhood of 29-30% turnout.
Yeah.
So you're not really. It's a good number, but probably if there was, it's hard to say whether more turnout meant he would have won, or if more turnout meant Krantz would have won. The margin would have been larger for Krantz.
I mean, the traditional advice for people running for council is don't bother going to apartment blocks, don't bother going to high rises, only go to single family homes. And that's because the single family home neighborhoods vote, and they are by far the wealthiest, most small C conservative neighborhoods. And so the lower the turnout, I tend to feel the lower the turnout, the more likely it is that you will not see change. Because it's the people who are older, who are more satisfied with things, will be the ones who actually go out and cast a vote.
But somewhat fascinating to me was I've noticed it's grown in the last couple of election cycles that there's these whispers of, can Gord actually, we need a change, Gord's tired, etc. And this time there's been a little bit more from that older crowd, oddly enough. And so I think
he's probably gotta go soon. I mean, how old is he?
He's up in his 80s.
I mean, I guess, maybe he's going to stick out until he's beaten McCallion's record. Maybe that's what he's
He already has.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
It was kind of, because I remember watching it. I was the mayor's breakfast last year, and I'd been hearing rumbles, hearing chatter that there was somebody that was going to come out of the woodwork and run against him. And there was he was then Councillor Mike Cluett. He was taking real soundings of whether he should go for it or not. And I was talking to him a lot, and there was, I thought he was going to go for it. And I'd also heard a bit of rumbling that there were some of them that were basically talking to each other that had decided, okay, you're going for that X seat, you're going for this one over here, and who'd move up, who'd go for mayor, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it's sort of watching the mayor's breakfast that morning. I didn't go in person because I was just getting over COVID. But I saw it on TV, and it looked like he caught even the town CAO by surprise a little bit when he made that announcement.
Yeah.
So I wondered if that might have had something to do with it. And it ended up Mike didn't run. And Mike, there was also, that was a fascinating one too, because Cluett was the incumbent for Ward 3 in the regional seat.
Right, yeah.
And for some reason, and Rick DiLorenzo moved up from municipal and ran against Mike Cluett. They kind of, and the third candidate that ran in there ended up winning. So,
I mean, this is the crazy thing about, the ranked ballot things. I know Milton probably wouldn't have used it at this election anyway. It takes so long for cities to get around to new ideas. But if ranked ballots hadn't been abolished, they really, what it means is that something like that wouldn't happen. You don't have two candidates running against each other and then neither wins, and someone comes up in the middle who really maybe shouldn't be winning. I'm not saying that in this case. I don't know the candidates well enough. It certainly has happened in the past, though. The kind of situation where the best candidate doesn't always win, particularly when there are multiple good candidates in the field. You can literally split the good vote down the middle, and the idiot vote comes up and wins. So it's just, again, an issue that we've talked about multiple times in this podcast. I think ranked ballots were really good. The experience in London when they had them seems to have been really positive, with first visible minority councillor being elected, someone who said she wouldn't have run under the old system because there wouldn't have been any point. And yeah, no more, unfortunately. We've got a few minutes left, I think. And this is something we're going to talk about in a full episode. Well, actually, by the time you hear this episode, you will have already heard the episode about this subject. But I thought we'd talk about it for a few minutes because I'm interested in hearing I fully admit to not being as independent as I might like on this issue, because I know a lot of people, some of them as kind of personal friends from back in when I was involved as a party volunteer. Okay. And so the story is that a letter was issued by I don't know, about 20 or 30 members of the Ontario Liberal Party, basically kind of trying to ask Mike Schreiner, the leader of the Ontario Greens, to jump to the Liberals and to run to be leader of the Liberals. Certainly caught me by surprise. And yeah, I don't know what I think about it. By the time people hear this episode, we'll have spoken to one of the key figures in that letter and got their side. So if you haven't heard that already, go and listen to it. But I thought, from the point of view of a journalist, someone who's not been knee deep in party politics, that particular party's politics at various points, what's your take on it all?
Well, my at first blush, I read I don't think it was written, but Robert Benzie tweeted it out. So I'll give him, I'm not sure whether he wrote it or not, but that story, it struck at first blush. I thought it was kind of crazy, and I still think it's a little crazy. And I think there's a real danger here that you're undermining the membership. You're undermining anyone that sort of is even considering throwing their hat in the ring. Like names I keep hearing, she's on the top of my head, Mitzi Hunter, for example. She she, for example, she's put in her time. She's worked for it. She's been in cabinet with Premier Wynne, and she's been, I think at one point it was colleges and universities. I want to say colleges and universities minister for a while at the very tail end. So she's put in her time, and for people like her, this has got to be a bit of an insult.
No, carry on. Sorry.
And like the other side of it as well, though, because I've covered Mike Schreiner. He's a really likable, affable guy, and he can really, like, that guy has got, like, he's extremely easy to talk to. But he's also the leader of the Green Party of Ontario, is sort of, so Mike Schreiner as an individual, it's potential, but from the Liberal perspective, it's, do you want to go that far left? I mean, you're going almost straight through, you're like running around the NDP and gonna try to get, and they're trying to sandwich them out almost, but NDP might be already.
Well, I mean, I would say that I don't think those old I don't think those old definitions of left and right work anymore. Like Joel and I went through with as much of a fine-tooth comb as we could the three platform. Actually, there were only three platforms because one of the party doesn't have a platform, the one that won. But we went through the three platforms that were published by the Greens, the NDP, and the Liberals, and so compared and contrast. And the Green platform and the Liberal platform were very, very similar. In fact, all three were very, very similar. The cigarette papers width between all of them. The NDP had a couple more things that were, to my mind, obviously coming from a kind of trades union perspective. I do think that the NDP platform was by far the weakest on anything to do with the environment. I just say that as a complete neutral, that it does. Well, some people will never accept that I am a complete neutral, but to my best attempt at being a complete neutral, it seemed to me that the NDP Green credentials were noticeably weaker than the other ones. Obviously, the Greens won the Green battle in terms of what they were promising, but the Liberals were not that far behind. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing you just said is that Mike Schreiner is very affable, and I will say that when I was still involved in party politics, I was aware of how well liked he was among many Liberals. And that's not necessarily something that held true for other Green Party leaders, the federal Greens in particular. So Mike Schreiner was well liked. He had personal connections of friendship or whatever with quite a few caucus members, I would guess. So that part of it, I guess, is maybe where this is coming from, that there have been those ties. The weird thing to my mind, and we'll see if we're going to be speaking to Kate Graham about this, and we'll see what her sort of answer is. Usually when this kind of thing happens in politics, basically crossing the floor is what we're talking about. Well, he actually has a floor to cross. Most of the Liberals don't. I'll take it. I'll go pay for that one. It's done, it's done in secret, literally, because it's embarrassing to that other person to be kind of publicly courted in this way. It's very embarrassing for Mike Schreiner to be in that position, because he's like, well, are you going to do it, Mike? And as far as I know, as of today, which is Monday, he hasn't made any response. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I heard because I listened to News Talk and Moore in the morning, and John Moore said this morning that they were trying to get him on this morning to try and he said, well, this morning's no good. He was going to David Onley's funeral, and they're going to try to get him tomorrow morning. But as of the end of the show, I don't think anybody had heard for sure.
Well,
so he's really not in much of a hurry to get. He doesn't seem to be in much of a hurry to get past this.
Well, there's a very easy way to make the story go away. It's like, no, I'm leader of the Greens.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. So that's the only thing that's making me wonder whether something could be up.
Yeah.
But the thing that makes me think it isn't up is like, this should never happen. I'm surprised that this would happen publicly and that anybody would take the risk of doing it publicly. But the fact that he responded, I don't know.
The other component is, and I just remember this now, the Green Party has this thing about being non-aligned with anybody. And
aligned with themselves.
Other than themselves, really. But like being open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. And so I also think that from the Liberal perspective, from that traditional sort of party perspective, which is more than likely not working anymore, the Liberals are going to have to make some compromises to make it work.
Well, it's definitely
kind of, and are they willing to do that?
And this is basically an attempt to kind of merge with the Greens and steal. I mean, from many Green members' perspective, I'm sure, to steal the Green thunder. I mean, the Greens are making real inroads into towns like Waterloo, Kitchener, and London as well. Maybe I can't remember. But they've made. They're starting to win seats. I mean, it's under first past the post. That's very difficult to do. And more than that, they've won seats and then held on to them through a subsequent election. There has always seemed to me to be more of a proximity between the Liberals and the Greens than between the NDP and the Greens for whatever reason. I think. So, I mean, I first got involved in party politics back in the Green, Stefan Dion's Green Shift. It wasn't so much I got involved to support it. I got involved because it had just been destroyed electorally by Stephen Harper. And I was like, all right, I'm getting involved. I'm going to fix it single-handedly. I'm going to fix everything. Didn't work out quite so well. But, that was my Liberal background, was being motivated by Green politics, not by Liberal politics,
Yeah. Well, and there's certainly definitely a new, I would think there's definitely a new mold sort of politician coming up that's might be trying to be a little less doggedly partisan.
I mean, it could. I also don't know what I think. I mean, most likely this is a mistake. It can. I think it definitely risks coming across badly. And I think that's maybe the sort of impression you get. This could be kind of insulting to the rank and file.
Yeah. And to anybody who would think right now of joining the Liberal Party of Ontario.
I mean, they're not saying that he would still have to run to be leader. He would still have to win the election. They're just asking him to be a candidate, I guess. In the same way that Michael Ignatieff was asked to be a candidate. And I think, again, the closest parallel would be Michael Ignatieff, and look how it worked out.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought he was the chosen, he was the savior. He was going to come in, he was going to fix the Liberal Party, and boy, did he not fix anything.
Might have been too smart for us, though.
I think really? People, well, don't get me started on that one. I mean,
he was a brilliant man outside. He is a brilliant man outside politics.
He was a brilliant man, but he's not a politician. And that's you do have to have those skills, and he did not have them at all. Like, it's just that sort of instinct, the Hazel McCallion instinct of saying the right thing at the right moment to the right person, that you don't you never have that moment of awkwardness where someone goes away thinking, God, they're a bit of a jackass. The guys who do best, you see that any conversation they have, the person walks away from that conversation thinking, oh wow, that's amazing, that person's really something. You see it again and again. It's charisma. It's a
Yeah,
little bit of star power very often.
it's
Same with the party
it's
leaders.
genuine.
Yeah, and it might be nice,
That genuine
might be
connection.
brilliant, but he did not have charisma. and maybe we shouldn't. That's not the way it should work, but it does. It's just you have to be realistic about it. Mike Schreiner is a proven politician, I guess, so maybe a better choice. But no, yeah, it's an interesting one, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but
it certainly will. By the time this episode goes
I
out,
don't
it may
know if,
already have happened.
yeah, I don't know if their problem so much was who. Well, obviously it was probably 75% who was leading them, but I mean, as much as the policy, because I tested with a local Liberal candidate here, I tested out their transit platform and asked a few questions about it. And outside of the period they were going, like the year period pilot project or something, my dates could be off, I don't have it in front of me, but they didn't have funding beyond that. And if you're and I just thought, if you're trying to get people out of their cars and relying more on transit, some stable funding would have to happen. You can't just do it for a year and not have an idea for people. It's not right for many people, because you're going to get relying on it, and then suddenly, I have to come up with $25 a week for my my pass, my monthly pass.
And I think, neither Andrea Horwath in the NDP nor Stephen Del Duca and the Liberals at any point in the run up to that election ever took control of the agenda.
No,
they never. The agenda was dug forward, such as there was any agenda. I mean, part of the problem was that I don't think anybody was paying attention, but they should have made this
so easy.
It's like there was an absolute disgraceful scandal in long-term care, and you couldn't make that stick, not even a little bit. I mean, you can usually take a few lumps out of the incumbents, even if they go on and win. But it's like you didn't even. How could long-term care, to my mind, is like, how could long-term care not be the issue at the last election? I don't know, but it wasn't.
How could his handling, for me, it was the handling of the whole pandemic.
Yeah.
Because it's like you can poke away at it, because it was like from the long-term care, and now we're finding the absolute mess in healthcare. And so that was around as well. There was the whole thing, I think it was early, was it last year or was it 2021? They did this, the promising he wanted to try to give police powers, and then every police chief from Windsor to Ottawa said, no, we don't want them.
Yeah. And
I mean, that was, how do you not get that to stick?
Yeah. and really, since last year, since the election, they've really taken the gloves off in so many different ways. This is but yeah, well, these are discussions for another day for sure. We've come a long way over the last 45 minutes or so we should probably wrap it up there. Thank you, Laura, for joining us once again. Really appreciate your insights, and no doubt we'll speak to you again before too long. And
look forward to it.
Thanks, everybody. We'll speak to you again in a couple of days. Bye-bye for now.